watching Morning at NTV.
A very good morning. I'm Chris Higenyi and welcome to Kickstarter segment of Morning at NTV. We are going to be unearthing the gaps in Uganda's food export and look at exactly what needs to be done to rectify some of the long-standing obstacles to arriving at some of the goals, especially on the strategic front of export. I'll be joined by Godber Tumushabe, a policy analyst. I'll also be joined by Honorable Denis Nyangweso, MP for Samia-Bugwe Central, as well as Honorable Paul Omara of Otuke County. Paul Omara will be joining us via Zoom from Nairobi. As and when that connection is through, we shall of course be introducing him formally. For now, let me come to the studio and just pose the simple question. When we talk about food export, there is absolutely no avoiding questions, including food security. What is our posture as a nation? And that is something that we need perspective on. Godber Tumushabe, this question goes to you. What is our food posture as a nation?
Now, I think first of all, let's if we look at our export economy from a more broader perspective, we need to understand that the bulk of Uganda's exports is agricultural exports.
That's right.
As of today, our export economy is comprised of about 80% of agricultural exports. So that's really where our main export business is. And that then means that a lot of the agriculture exports are actually food crops, although we know that that segment is dominated by coffee. Of course, in Uganda, we don't consider coffee as a food, but actually it should be a food.
It is.
The rest of the world looks at coffee as a food. Traditionally, we have really dealt with coffee as an export crop, which we don't deal with. I think that is changing a little bit, but almost, I think, up to 22% of our of the 80% actually is dominated by coffee. So, in other words, if you are thinking about this export trade, you are looking at agriculture, and you want to make sure that domestically you are putting in place the kinds of measures that ensures that there is food security. And really the policy posture is always in two ways. One is that there is a tendency for countries to then limit export as a measure to achieve food security. But actually, the right policy posture is to be able to increase production. Because I think we can, as a country, we have a lot of potential to increase production of food crops. So in other words, you can produce excess and be able to export. So you are able to export, increase your export revenue from food crops or from food exports without undermining your national food security. So where we have not been able to do this, in most cases, it is really the dysfunction within the system. Because to have a robust production and export economy, you need the institutions to work. The institutions that work to increase production, the institutions that work to ensure proper post-harvest handling, which deals with the output, but also the quality
processing.
Institution that deals with quality control, because as a country, one of our major areas of weakness is quality control. I don't think that we've been able to fix that. If you look at the current one, I think one of the biggest nightmares that we have now are these strange drinks that have come on the market. If you listen to local radios, especially in Western Uganda, there you hear all manner of drinks, and man, I can tell you, I go down to Ntungamo in my farm, and you look at the bottles that are being just thrown all over recklessly. And all these people who work on these farms, for them, they don't understand the problem of this littering. So, in other words, we don't have the institutions like Uganda Bureau of Standards, institutions like Ministry of Agriculture, because that they deal with sanitary and phytosanitary issues. I don't think that we've organized them in such a way that they are operating in a business-like manner, and I think that's what we need.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Honorable Nyangweso, at policy level, we do, of course, have, listening to Godber Tumushabe, what you hear is a policy dilemma. More like many times the left hand knows not what the right hand is up to, and that is how we find ourselves in fits and starts. But as we are talking right now in terms of agriculture and how it's being positioned to be the lead collector for revenue for the nation, where are we at in terms of legislation? Are the dilemmas being worked on? If we don't have any to speak about, what is that line of progress that we are pursuing?
Yeah, thank you, Higenyi. And thank you for inviting me on NTV.
You're most welcome.
I want to thank Godber, who has articulated the situation. He has clearly stated that almost 80% of our exports is agriculture. But previously and up to almost now, agriculture has been left to fate, to nature. Even the production, what we are exporting, has not had a lot of interventions. It's just because we have good climate, good weather, and the food crops have of recent become cash crops. And as a result, people have started earning out of the excess production. This should have caught the attention of government for intervention, support to the sector, professionalization of the sector. I am happy that when we were receiving the State of the Nation address by the President in June, he was categorical about production in agriculture, most especially intervention in small solar power schemes that would ensure constant supply, because that has been lacking mostly in Uganda, and that's why we have had very high price fluctuations. At the time of harvest, the prices go very low and the farmers experience a lot of losses, and after 3 months we have very high rocketing prices. So there has been a lack of stabilization of prices in the agriculture sector, and this calls for a policy intervention by government. One thing that we should also appreciate, that at the production part, government has now come up clearly to improve production. You have been talking about the parish development model. We are most likely to have a crisis because production is definitely going to increase. There has been funding of agriculture. I left my constituency 2 days ago, and I was told in my parish that we had received 100 million in my parish, 109 million, which is going to support farmers to improve production. But what next? We are going to have a loss if we do not have interventions to support, one, processing of agricultural products. Two, marketing, intentional. We must look and provide market for the farmers, such that they are able to plan, they are able even to be financed privately because of assured production and investment in agriculture. They must be guaranteed. That's how even the private sector will come in to support agriculture. Otherwise, as of now, when we leave them at fate, then even in the private sector interventions are minimal. So what we're talking about is the Ministry of Agriculture to come up through the leakages which Godber has talked about, which are lacking, because there must be a leakage between Ministry of Agriculture, that's the production, the Uganda Export Promotion Zone, authority. Then there must be a leakage with the standard agencies. We have Uganda National Bureau of Standards. What is their role in promoting food export in the region? That's very, once that leakage is not there, is not clear, then we are not going to have what we expect to get from the trade in agriculture products.
Okay, so that speaks to the inability, for example, by the various stakeholders to have one straight line of work where you know, for example, that if you are working at the market level, you're working at the farmers level, we seem not to know who to go to at what point, and everyone tries to do their job or their part in the best possible way. The latest spat between Uganda and South Sudan over maize is the characteristic of the nature of approach that the policy makers bring to the table. South Sudan should be a major importer of Ugandan food, a major importer, and we should be able to galvanize as enough resources as possible to be able to flood this market with food and make a lot more money. But there are a lot of inconsistencies, right, from how the traders are treated when they're on the other side. Now we're seeing issues of standards of the maize, and some have laughed at that, saying, hey, there is a lot of maize of the same quality that is being exported to other countries, and there are no complaints there. And here we have Juba saying Uganda is at fault. First, bring us up to speed with where we are on that and what exactly the problem is.
You see, the agriculture business, like every other business, is really, it's something you have to approach in a value chain approach.
Okay.
So in other words, you're looking at an entire value chain. And I think, as Denis has mentioned, even with some of the interventions at the local level, you're basically, you need to be looking at a complete value chain process. So in other words, if I'm doing a product, I am looking at the production on farm, and incidentally, I can assure you that even quality should start on farm. Yes. What are you producing to get on the market? So if you look at it as a value chain, you start on farm, then you deal with the post-harvest handling. That is where that's one of the major areas, the major segments of the value chain that we have problems with as Ugandans. So in other words, I'm a coffee farmer, so I'll go into the farm and perfect my farming practices, produce very good quality coffee, and then when I go to post-harvest handling, when I harvest the coffee, I probably don't know that I should not dry it in the wrong place. I need to look for the different technologies that can then also improve on that quality. When you go to processing, it's the same. Now, it is even worse for food crops like maize. Those ones, maize, beans, peas, and soy, and everything, those ones even need more careful handling. So you need to be able to do that. And so, at the end of the day, the food business is a very highly political business. Yes, I think as a country we need to understand that. This is a very highly political business because there are lots of vested interests. So, if you have South Sudan, and this is a conflict country, it can move towards stability, and then the South Sudan people begin to produce maize.
That's right.
I can assure you, at that point, the South Sudan people, government will start looking at its own farmers and how they benefit from that local market. So we are dealing with the politics of food, and that has to be factored into your policy posture as a country. As a country. I think I would really give credit to some of the agencies that have been trying, especially on our products. Agencies like Investment Authority, Export Promotion Board, they have been working, even UCDA, the Uganda Coffee Development Authority on coffee, they really try their best.
That's right.
I think I know because I'm closely associated with the people in the Investment Authority, and I know how much they have invested in trying to sort out our trade in dairy products with Kenya. So Kenya will always put a number of obstacles. In most of the cases, the obstacles to trade are non-tariff.
Non-tariff.
Yeah, so you have a number of, so there are border controls, there are quality controls, there are sanitary issues, and that's why you need very dynamic and properly resourced institutions that are able to do market intelligence, that are able to negotiate deals and break through some of these restrictions. And I think that that's an area that we need to improve as a country.
Okay, I'm glad you bring in the factor of Kenya and the fact that agriculture and food is pretty much very political. Let's now go to Nairobi, where we have Honorable Paul Omara, the MP for Otuke County, joining us via Zoom. Very good morning, Honorable. Good morning, Honorable Paul Omara. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
All right, thank you very much. I hope you have been following the discussion with Godber Tumushabe and Honorable Nyangweso here regarding food export and Uganda's posture. Right now, of course, being in Kenya is timely. Uganda has in the recent past been involved in agriculture and food spats with Kenya, the latest being the ban and later the lifting of that ban on exportation from Uganda of milk powder. With your knowledge of inside workings between Kampala and Nairobi with regard to the latest pain points, what do you have for us and how can you guide us, especially when it comes to ensuring that Uganda's food export regime is handled the best way possible?
Thank you very much. I have had the opportunity to talk to many of the business people in Nairobi. And for Uganda, there are two issues. One, I think there is a sense in which the East African cooperation in terms of market access, integration of the economies has not yet happened fully. Because there's a lot of politics that has come into it. Kenya is into the spirit of protectionism. They want to protect their local industry, and they actually confessed to me and said that Ugandans have a lower cost of production. And for them, they're saying the inputs that they use into the agricultural production are very expensive. And they started from fertilizers, the mechanization that they use, the limited land space. And so it makes the products very expensive. And they said that Ugandan products were basically wiping them out of the market. So in the main, Kenya is a lot of protectionism being exercised because the local industry is crying. Now, I thought that the integration was about efficiencies, bringing efficiencies to bear, and also making sure that the final consumer receives good at a much lesser cost in the East African region. I think that the political leaders need to deal this at a presidential or at a ministerial level. The second issue actually was around standards. We should admit that the enforcement of standards in Uganda is wanting. I sit on the Finance Committee of Parliament, and Uganda National Bureau of Standards, UNBS, has been making requests for additional human resources. They needed about 600 people so that they could be able to quickly move around the country. They will be able to enforce standards, be able to making sure that they test products and issue certificates to some of our manufacturers and basically also our processors. So I think as a country, if we want to export quality products, we must ensure that UNBS is strengthened and is given the necessary resources to make sure that the products that we export outside Uganda is of high quality. I think the third reason is mainly around organization. In the past, the cooperatives used to be a very powerful vehicle for organization, for collaboration, and also for quality assurance. These days you find actually the middlemen buying this produce. Some of them are quite, how do I call it, disingenuous. They would add, for example, soil or sun into products, which in effect really spoil the name of the country. So I think we need to move into organization and making sure that the cooperatives are working, that the post-harvest handling and quality assurance happens at the level of production, at the level of processing, so that by the time UNBS is coming or government quality assurance people are coming at a macro level, at a micro level, the standards has already been assured.
All right.
The cooperatives would have worked as a team to making sure what is coming out from the farm, the on-farm items should be of serious quality.
All right, thank you very much.
That one organization at a much lower level.
Okay, thank you very much. We shall be returning to you, Honorable Omara, very shortly. Allow me throw it to the Honorable Denis Nyangweso. Hearing Honorable Omara speak there of a three-pronged issue, the issue of cooperatives and the fact that that bears the magic bullet for Uganda's agricultural sector is pretty much very evident. There's been talk of finally establishing or re-establishing, for that matter, the cooperative bank. Does that actually stand a real chance?
Yeah,
Godber has a totally different tone to it, but we shall hear him out. Okay.
Yeah, because we have now gone beyond lamentations. We have accepted, we have had challenges, and we must seek
solutions must be sought.
Yeah. And definitely that one is a solution, is a step in the right direction. If you look at how the parish model has been organized on enterprise groups, this is how cooperatives used to work. And I believe with the strong enterprise groups that have been supported at micro level, we are most likely to benefit from one, a call or a demand for organization at the top. And that will be the creation of the cooperatives. Then two, and therefore the issue of organization, which Honorable Omara has talked about, it's going to come out naturally because these people they have been funded. And once they grow, they must be organized, they must be supported. And this is the right way for us as government to support these people through the various cooperatives, through supporting the enterprise groups, which are 18 in number. So when they should come up with almost 18 cooperative societies for soya beans, for all those ones, such that at the end of the day, we can have macro interventions, and that will culminate into a strong cooperative society for Uganda. That's all I can say.
Okay. Godber Tumushabe, your tone was very dismissive when I spoke about the fact that one of the solutions that we have at hand is the re-establishment of the cooperative bank.
No, I think that as a country, I don't know. Probably the best thing we can use, the best reference is the Bourbon monarchy of France. we used to write and say the Bourbons had
learned nothing,
had forgotten nothing and learned nothing.
Yeah.
Because you see, as a country, we need to look at the history of where we've come from, the things we have attempted.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was there when the plan for modernization of agriculture was launched. That's, I think, in August 2000. That's when the president launched the plan for modernization of agriculture. Even the things that Denis and Paul have talked about, the cooperatives, they are there in the PMA. So I was there when NADS was launched. And we went around the country forming farmer groups. Yeah. So I would want anybody to tell me, where are those farmer groups? Because so the point I'm making is that these things cannot be engineered. They cannot be, they cannot be put on a paper and then you go and create them. No, these have to be demand-driven formations. All of the groups that we've created in this country, whether they are NADS, most of the circles, the local circles, because there are circles which have graduated, but most of the small ones, they have all been driven by government's welfare programs.
That is right.
Yeah, government says we are bringing money, people out there go and plan on how to take this money. So, I mean, with PDM, I'm one of the skeptics of this whole program, in the sense that, you know, business is done by entrepreneurs. Yeah, so even with the cooperative movement, they were managers of the cooperatives, because my uncle, our family, sold coffee to Banyankore Kweterana. But I don't think that we knew how Banyankore Kweterana was organized and how it transacted business. Our job was to go and grow coffee and deliver it. From there, we didn't know.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making, that there must be entrepreneurs who run these things. And I think that in terms of modeling by government bureaucrats and politicians, they are not looking at who is the entrepreneur in these formations. Now, if you think of PDM, it's a very good political program. Good if you are a president, even if it was you, Nyangweso, or Godber, or Higenyi, PDM is a good political program. You deliver it, probably you will get the dividends. These are political dividends. On the economic side, it's a moot question, because these things, we have tried them over time. Now, I need to emphasize that in a way, you can actually have some things work out. But you need to know that you are betting. And I know, for example, that...
Very quickly, I need to go to Honorable Omara.
I know that there are crops where people are organizing around crops. So those things are not driven by any government funding. It's people who are engaged in the business and they're organizing themselves. And I think government needs to play a different role rather than engineering formation of groups, because that's not how groups are formed.
All right, let me come to you, Honorable Omara, as we wrap this discussion up. Time is not our best ally. You are in Kenya, and just over 2 weeks ago, President William Ruto was up and about trying to ensure that he gets into terms with the EU over the economic partnership agreement that seems to be sidestepping the rest of the region, especially after there were some agreements before that we would be on the same track, especially when creating this kind of bargaining power position. I do not know whether you've had an opportunity to get some detail on how far this EPA is and what the pain points on the part of other East African countries is, especially in light of the fact that President Ruto wants to go at it alone. Honorable Mara? Technology seems to be doing us a little bit of disservice there, but I'll pose that question again if we happen to be, if we get through to Honorable Omara, who is joining us via Zoom. But that question can still be one that can be...
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So I was talking about the economic partnership agreement with the European Union that President William Ruto has taken Kenya into. In what appears to be... I
can hear you very well.
Okay, in what appears to be a sidelining of the rest of the East African region.
Could you kindly repeat the question?
The question is around the economic partnership agreement that President William Ruto has entered with the European Union that appears to sidestep the rest of the East African region in the push for a collective bargaining when it comes to international trade. William Ruto seems to think that Kenya is not very well positioned if it has to wait for the rest of us who seem to be in fits and starts with regard to national policy. You are in Nairobi right now. I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to interface with some of the trade technocrats there on this particular issue and what it means for the rest of the region, especially in light of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's push for collective bargaining power when we hold together as the EAC.
What I see is that there seems to be a disarray of common policies in East African region.
Okay.
Not only East African region, but in Africa. The problem is that when push comes to shove, there is always this thing of the sovereign. Yeah. That we are a sovereign nation, we will push our own agenda, we have a responsibility to our electorate, to our people, and so therefore, I only have 5-year term to really do something for Kenya, and so if it means walking alone, I'll walk alone. But I think that kind of attitude will help us as East Africans, because the European Union has a tendency of splitting Africa. Basically, you walk alone, you are a very small economy in real terms, and basically you lose the efforts around bargaining power. Where I'm sitting, I think that's a mistake. There is a rush by every sovereign to do something for its citizens, but I think a little patience would have given us opportunity to achieve more in terms of collective bargaining. But when we go alone, we are basically sitting ducks. And by the way, when you meet these people, they don't even, there's no negotiation. You are just given something to take. So I think, I know President Ruto is very energetic. Okay. He's been championing a lot of things for Africa around standing together, but also it's a little bit opportunistic, really, to walk alone and face the EU. Kenya facing EU is a sitting duck. And so I would want to agree with President Museveni that if really we want to achieve something, we must go as a collective and make sure we put forward our right foot forward and really bargain for some of these things.
All right, Honorable, speaking there via Zoom, we seem to be falling prey to the vagaries of technology there. But of course, the point is made, the fact that he disagrees with Ruto's approach. But again, I can sense that Godber Tumushabe thinks one should be able to do exactly what they ought to do in order to move forward if others are dragging their feet. Gentlemen, this discussion cannot be exhausted in its entirety. I'm going to have to beg that we leave it right there. Denis Nyangweso, Honorable MP Samia-Bugwe, many thanks for making it to the show this morning, and many thanks to you, Godber Tumushabe, for the perspective. Honorable Omara in Nairobi, of course, I know we've had a little bit of trouble with the Zoom there today, but any other day we shall be able to continue with the discussion. That does it for this Kickstarter discussion on trying to understand the gaps with regard to Uganda's food export posture. The conversation will continue online and on YouTube. That is Morning at NTV. I'm Chris Higenyi.